All right. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. This past week, we have been doing whatever week. I just allowed my patrons to suggest whatever they wanted as a way to celebrate having wrapped up the 5th year of Critical Reactions. And I randomly selected 5 tracks for last week. There was no polling or anything like that. I just basically rolled some dice and saw what happened. But one of the songs I wanted to make a video about, and it didn't get picked. So we're going to check out that one today. It is Ashenspire's The Law of Asbestos. This is a band that I have talked about in the past. In fact, this exact album showed up on my 2022 Album of the Year list. The person who picked it said that they knew I had checked it out before. They were curious on my thoughts about it, though. So I figure, why not? Let's dive into it. Let's not really see what's going on. Maybe for some of you, you're not familiar with this, but I already know what's going on with this track. Let's dive into The Law of Asbestos. You know, it's interesting. It's been a couple of years. I don't remember this opening, though. I remember a lot of this song, but... actually, I do remember that. This is only their second album. I can catch up on their whole discography today. Why haven't I done that yet? Sort of like a twisted lounge music. Yeah, nice little 3-pulse here. It's so bleak, and it just sort of meanders here. Individual lines have direction, but not all of it. And the lack of movement, the lack of change, it's just the way things are. That'll make more sense later.
Under the budgetary hammer, do they sleep well, wrapped in irony? Better that than tangled in austerity. Better hours of their children in poverty.
So much dissonance and just a lack of cohesion here at all.
Tied over the tampered with until it's their turn. A penny saved! Rainbow burns again and again and again! It's worse than the pox for all these houses.
They're back and forth on the 2 guitars, sort of having a conversation with their dissonant spikes.
If I drink Tollins reagent, will I finally shine inside? Or will I see myself as God sees me? If I pour it in my eyes? silent but for the rain. Weary lungs, asthmatic brain.
That release of all that tension, not in a fully resolved way, just allowing this new dissonance, this new kind of tension to take its place.
And tell me, is this never the humor of it? Some architect's great satire and prefabricated shit. The rots in the lamp creeping in every corner.
Just
A reflection of the
pure
presupposed
noise.
sin of every presupposed hoarder. Squander! Thief! Gangrenous scum! If the game's up, I'll gladly lose a leg!
The polyrhythms in this section too, the rising intensity.
This is done with full intent!
That line always gets me. And these breaks are really nice. Overall, the album is kind of unrelenting, but even as dark as it is, there's a type of beauty in these melodic passages.
3 months to the gutter. Never 3 months to the peak. Another day to grind your fingers for the simple right to eat. Always 3 months to the gutter. Never 3 months to the crown. Another deep breath of asbestos in a God-forsaken town. Always 3 months to the gutter. Never 3 months to the top. Another set of fucking homeless fights outside another empty shop. Always 3 months to the gutter. Never 3 months to a cent. This is not a house of amateurs. This is done with full intent. With full intent. Always 3 months to the gutter, never 3 months to the peak. Another day to grind your fingers for the simple right to eat. Only 3 months to the gutter, never 3 months to the crown. Another deep breath of asbestos in a God-forsaken town. Only 3 months to the gutter, never 3 months to the top. Another set of fucking homeless fights outside another empty shop. Always 3 months to the gutter. Never 3 months to a cent. This is not a house of amateurs. This is done with full intent. Done with full intent.
Even Even today, I knew what was coming, and it's still. I knew this album. I think this is the first track on the album, right? Anyways, I knew this was going to be a good album when all this I don't even know what made me stick around. Yeah, this is the first track. I don't even know what made me stick around. Like, there's nothing at the beginning of the song that has my name on it at all. Although I did like the violin and the sax. Those are definitely sounds you don't typically hear in something as dissonant and noisy as this. Maybe that's what had me stick around, but it could have been the vocals too, very impassioned. Anyways, something in the first 2 minutes, I was like, I gotta finish this up. And at the end, I was bawling. And I was like, a whole album of this ahead of me? I don't know if I can do it. And I got through all of it. It's only like 40 minutes long. And I was like, yep, that is one of the greatest albums I never want to listen to again. And for the most part, up until today, I really haven't. But I was kind of curious if it was going to have that same impact. And yeah. Yeah, I don't think you can ever lose that. I mean, sure, if you listen to it every day or something, it's going to kind of lose that element. But I mean, the words, the passion, the music, it's all still there. I guess you can kind of become numb to it, but I don't know. I don't want to. It's one of the reasons why I kind of don't want to revisit it often. I don't want it to become something that just is. You know, there are films that have greatly moved me, and I've just watched them so often that I still kind of get that feeling, but not like it used to be. Sometimes you just got to put space between your explorations of art, of an art, I suppose. But y'all come here for analysis, right? What's going on in here? It's noise. A lot of noise, a lot of dissonance. Particularly when we're looking at what the guitars, the bass, and drums are doing. There's a lot of things going on in here that are rhythmically complex. We have polyrhythms showing up, but also a lot of it is just harmonic noise. There's a lot of, as I mentioned, dissonant tones in here, and that's just when two or more pitches kind of clash, that their wavelengths don't line up very well, and it creates a warbly staticness in the sounds. A lot of that is in here. A lot of purposeful choice of dissonant, noisy layers, just 4 or 5 pitched instruments doing whatever they want, completely disconnected from anything around them. There's no interconnectivity of the melodic lines. The rhythms are clashing. There's not even a lot of synergy between rhythmic devices, and harmonically, it's all over the place. I think that makes the parts where everything comes together more beautiful. Granted, like there at the end, just before the final section, we had an instrumental part with the saxophone solo. We had just come out of one of the noisiest sections, just a layering of sound. I can't even say that there's pitch in there. It's just, it almost becomes a wall of white noise. And all of that gives way to a bit more of synergy. The bass and the guitars begin to work together to create this nice floor, a foundation for everything. The flute comes in, the dulcimer comes in, they have little ornamental lines, and the saxophone lays down a beautiful solo on top of it. All of it dark and haunting, but beautiful nonetheless. Very cohesive, having a single focus of harmony and connectivity of the foundation, the melody, the harmony, the rhythm, everything really coming together at this point. We see a few of these moments, one at the beginning as well, and even right there at the very end, everything seems to be working together really well. It's an interesting concept. Normally I would call it finding beauty in the darkness or something along those cliched lines. But when you read the lyrics, there is no beauty here. At least not on the surface. We'll get into that later. But I think mostly the purpose of these segments is just to create contrast. Not anything for the themes of the lyrics, but particularly and specifically for the music, just to create a little bit more sense, to create an element of palatability. It's still dark, it's still, well, even dissonant at times. But we have an idea of melody, we have an idea of harmony. In contrast to what comes around it, a lot of this makes sense. It's dark, it's ominous, it's bleak, but at least it makes sense. I like these moments. I think this is one thing that really helped me digest this album and get it a little bit more. They could have gone the complete dissonant route. We've seen bands, I mean, there's even the dissonant black metal genre, an entire genre of music built around harmonies that this band explores at times. And I'd even say that parts of this lean into a black metal aesthetic as well, particularly with an oppressiveness of both atmosphere and attack. In fact, in a lot of ways, this is not too dissimilar from dissonant black metal, but it's in these moments that we deviate from that and find something a bit more harmonious in execution. And it's a break, but it isn't a break. The weight, the crushing bleakness of the song is ever present. It's just a little better here, a little more palatable, a little more doable. These moments aren't as bad. And in contrast, subjecting yourself to an entire 40 minutes of this, you eventually look forward to these. Sort of like a silver lining. Things are still garbage, but there's one thing to look forward to. And like I said, I think that's one of the few reasons I ended up sticking around with the album. But I also want to talk about the vocals. This is definitely a vocal style you want to use if you want to capture my attention. I know that's a very specific thing. I am one person out of billions. Why would you want to craft music just for me? Yeah, no, that's not what I'm saying. But especially if you are requesting music and you want to send me something with harsh vocals that I'll enjoy, this is definitely a direction to go. There is, I think, almost zero chance that you'll listen to this and not feel the embodiment of this vocalist's rage and anger, even depression, and at times just a lack of being able to push forward. Hopelessness, that's the word. Right from the start, the vocals are aggressively delivered, but not in like a metal way. I mean, it is like a metal way, but it feels more natural. It almost feels like yelling at times. It would really surprise me if this was sustainable at all, just because it typically goes against the sounds I typically associate with sustainable harshes. But I suppose at the end of the day, it's just a really extreme harsh clean. And there's plenty of documentation on how to do a safe compressed clean. So, but at the end of the day, it sounds like yelling. It sounds like somebody who has exhausted all of their ability to convey what they want to say in a in an acceptable way, with an acceptable voice and volume. And so they resort to shouting, saying things as loud as they can. Because there is a clean element in here, it has pitch to it. You can hear highs and lows and rises. It isn't like death metal growls or that modern metalcore fry scream that everyone seems to have these days, where it's just kind of a static sound. There's dynamic elements to it. And not just in the pitch either, but in the texture, the spice to it all, the flavor of it. Some are less compressed, some are more compressed. He has vocal cracks where you can actually hear his pitch jump up an octave or so, and he just leaves them in as it flicks into that high note and comes back down to where he wants. Because of things like that, it feels very uncontrolled. There isn't any, I think, intentional flow of melody. There isn't, I want an E, an F sharp, and then a G in this order. It's just like I'm saying these three notes, and this is what feels natural for me to, or I'm saying these three syllables, and these are the notes that feel natural for me to say them that way. Towards the end of the song, you can actually hear some of this hopelessness set in as the vocals are still angry but with less power behind them. And even on some notes, I think it's just because he ran out of breath towards the end of a line, but he just kind of brings it down and it just ends on a nothingness. There's no resolution to that. There's no punctuation. A lot of this is very punctuated. Harsh syllables, T's, D's, K's, they come across very sharply and pinpointed. Towards the end of the song, though, it's kind of exasperated, running out of gas. To me, I just find an easy way to connect with all of this. It feels very human. I know a lot of people say that harsh vocals to them are an extreme way of saying words. That when clean singing doesn't get the emotion across, harsh is the way to go. I agree with that usually. But where my divide tends to land is people who enjoy flat, monotonous, extreme vocals. And they find that to be expressive. And I'm not saying that that is a wrong take. We all experience music and art differently, but when vocals tend to be a bit more flat, I lose that human element because human speech is dynamic. And so if you want me to connect with the emotion, it's going to have to be delivered dynamically. And that's where harsh vocals like this come in. This is very expressive to me. This is very emotional. This is very easy for me to click with. And pairing the vocal style with the noise and the grit and the overwhelming depressive atmosphere of all of this, I didn't even know what the lyrics were my first time through this, and I knew exactly what the song was about. Maybe not the particular idea, but I understood all of the emotions wrapped up into it, the anger, the hopelessness, the absolute vile rejection of something. It's just so apparent in the dissonant music and the bleak atmosphere and the vocal delivery. But I think they do some interesting things with that, with the rising energy in the middle, jumping back and forth between pure noise and slightly melodic ideas. All in all, it's very rare for something as experimental as this, as dissonant as this, as destructive to connect with me. And I think that they do a fantastic way of injecting a lot of humanity into sounds that I tend to find inhuman. I don't need to read the lyrics, but I want to refresh myself on them. Um, Maybe I'll pick up on some stuff I didn't pick up on last time. And then we'll do that little lyrical dive and then we'll wrap this video up. Alright, this song is about a class war. between those in power and those without. The very first stanza says, capital's preeminence made matter nailed to the high rise under the budgetary hammer. Do they sleep well wrapped in irony? Better that than tangled in austerity, better ours than their children in poverty. The idea that money is more important than anything else, even when it comes to building buildings. And it says that it's better to continue to make money than find themselves fighting with making things better. That's what it says, better that, where we are right now, than tangled in austerity and trying to figure out how to make things better. Also, better our children in poverty than theirs. Second stanza says, a corner cut, a penny saved. Grenfell burns again and again and again. Grenfell Tower was a 24-story flat, a high-rise in West London that caught fire in 2017. I was reading about this, trying to figure out what was the cause of it, and it seems that there was a faulty, an electrical fault in the refrigerator on a fourth floor, but that when we look around everything else, there were irregularities, inadequately installed parts of the building. There was a ton of unusually used insulation and cladding panels and highly combustible fillers that were used to make everything a little bit better, maybe not necessarily up to code, but where it looks good. And all of this caused the fire to grow quickly and rapidly. If this were created a little bit better, if they had worried about austerity, maybe this would have been a small incident, but instead it was one of the largest and deadliest accidents in London. It says burned for 60 hours, and it was one of the deadliest structural fires in the UK since 1988, and the worst residential fire since World War II. He says Grenfell burns again and again and again. That was not an isolated incident. Structurally unsound buildings continue to harm people as faults begin to grow. And it's not even necessarily large things like a building caught on fire or the building crumbled, and everyone inside it were injured. It's little things. We'll actually talk about later in this track about stuff like mold and water leaks and all sorts of damages like that. In fact, the very next line is, there's worse than the pox for all of these houses. This next part brings in the idea of the working class not being able to have any sort of power or say in their environment. It says the scaffolding holds the bread from their mouth as it rouses the worker to sell themselves short. Basically, if you have to eat, you'll take whatever job you can. It's one of the reasons I think minimum wage hasn't really risen too much, because we can't very much protest for it. If we stop working for a week, we now don't have food. We're stuck right at the bottom. Says that we're both the foundation and the cornerstone, but entirely bereft of support. We are what everything hinges on, but we have nothing to support us. Now there is this part that I even use this as my snippet in the AOTY video. I really like this moment, but I don't get it. He says, if I drink Toland's reagent, will I finally shine inside? And will I see myself as God sees me if I pour it in my eyes? Toland's reagent is a chemical that contains silver and is used to create mirrors. I didn't know that prior to today. So if I drink something that we use to make mirrors, will I shine inside? That kind of makes sense. I think the idea also is that it's chemical, so it will kill us. And I wonder if that's supposed to be what that is. If I allow myself to succumb to the same evils of greed, will I finally shine? I feel like I'm grasping at straws with that, though. Yeah. I don't know. It's a very powerful moment musically, and I think this is one of the peaks of the song as far as the vocal performance goes. I really don't get that stanza, though. Here we're coming into the part about dangers of within, not necessarily without, or any large, accident happening. And he says, some architect's great satire. The rot and the damp is creeping in on every corner, a reflection of the presupposed sin of every presupposed hoarder. The idea that if there is damage to the house, such as rot or damp or mold of any sort, then it's a reflection of the sin of the person who lives there. The presupposed sin of the presupposed hoarder has nothing to do with the fact that maybe this was not built properly. Maybe the pipes are leaking. That has nothing to do with the person who lived there. That allows water to pool up and create mold. But no, it's your fault. You're the renter. You obviously screwed something up. It wasn't like that when you got in. He calls these people scroungers, thieves, gangrenous scabs. Follows this up with, it's not a house of amateurs. This is done with full intent. Speaking of that right there, I forgot to bring this up. A lot of this is about housing, buildings in general. I think it's interesting that earlier on he said that we're both the foundation and the cornerstone, but bereft of support. Taking this metaphor and turning it into one about architecture. I thought that was really clever. But yeah, he says, this is not something that just happens. This is done with full intent. These people know exactly what they're doing. You can see these same situations happening everywhere over the world. The poor are getting abused by those in power who are building the places that we work, that we sleep, that we play. There's corners being cut everywhere and nothing we can do about it, and the blame always gets put on us for being there. Coming back to the idea of the working class, the end of the song, if you were looking at the lyrics, it's very clear. It says, always 3 months to the gutter, never 3 months to the peak, or to the top, or to the ascent, or to the crown. That word gets changed to fit the rhyme that comes in the next dual lines. But the idea is that we're always closer to homelessness than becoming rich. I feel this is very impactful as an American with our healthcare system, even our elderly who went through some of the best economic times to be alive and easily found jobs and bought houses on a single income pay for an entire family and this kind of stuff. 50s, 60s, 70s, the nuclear family. Even they're getting robbed of their earnings and savings through the healthcare system. No matter how much you've saved, 99% of us are still closer to being homeless than being part of the 1%. It says, another day to grind your fingers for the simple right to eat, working yourself to the bone just for food. That should be a basic human right. And yet, people are pushing their bodies to the brink just to consume something necessary for life. He says, another set of fucking homeless spikes outside another empty shop. I don't know if that's common around the rest of the world. America has a lot of these homeless spikes, which is where the title of the album comes from. Hostile architecture. It's things that are built that are anti-people. Homeless spikes are little triangular juts up in the ground, in concrete, that make it difficult for homeless people to sleep on that sidewalk. It's also terrible to walk over. You can't really bike over them either. It's just not great design for absolutely anything, but the intent is to be cruel to those who are already down on their luck. And the irony here is that these spikes in this example are put outside of an empty shop, a place that could house people if it were turned into a homeless shelter. But instead that money was put towards making something that helps absolutely no one. And of course, all of this is wrapped up again, stated 2 or 3 more times before the song ends. This is done with full intent. It's not a house of amateurs. This is the song sung by someone who is pissed off at the state of things, absolutely cannot believe that this is where we are at. And without any other way of saying it peacefully, which hasn't worked in the past, it is time to shout it as loud as you can. The noise in this song, I think, is supposed to be the dissonance of life. Both the separation of how life should be and how life is, but also just how, well, like I said, dissonance to me is a noise I don't enjoy. This is an environment I don't enjoy, musically and socially. I think it's supposed to be uncomfortable to listen to because it's talking about an uncomfortable state of things. And I mentioned that every once in a while, we still have this bleak, dreary, somber atmosphere, but we have some nice melody to go along with it. Usually the saxophone and the violin will give us a nice little thing. I had mentioned that these segments come up as a silver lining. Things aren't any better than they were, but, it's a little bit better. It's something to look forward to amidst all the noise. That's kind of how life feels like, too. We have things that help us find joy, but societally nothing's changing. We might have moments of victory, but overall, we're still sliding downhill. Everything pointed out here in this song is only going to get worse going ahead. That's what I feel like those moments are in the track. Now, the atmosphere is still bleak, but a moment of something a little bit better, and in contrast, is actually perceived as good. A moment to breathe, despite being in any other song, still being a bleak, depressive moment. It's about contrast. It's about what comes around it. It's about perspective. Yeah, this is a heavy track. Was when I heard it the first time. Still hits. And I finished this track up, this reaction up, once again, not really wanting to listen to this song again. I probably still will, a few more years down the line. Hopefully things are better come 2030. Maybe. Probably not. But it's not a song I like to revisit too often, and 2 times in 2 years, that feels alright. These are my thoughts. Ashenspire's The Law of Asbestos. What do you think of this song? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Is there anything you'd like to, I don't know, maybe have your own interpretation of it that's different than mine, or your own opinion of things? Put all of that and any other thoughts you have down in the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all 3 of those. That wraps it up for everything, almost. We do have an album review tonight, but that'll be the last thing for 2024. The next time you'll see me is January 5th. I believe it's a Sunday. Yes, January 5th. I will do a live stream. It'll be the first one of 2025. So if you don't pop by for that album review, I hope all of you have a fantastic holiday season. You enjoy the rest of your 2 weeks, New Year's, whatever holidays you might celebrate, and I'll catch back up with you at the beginning of next year. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.